Hello and welcome to today's event, AI-Driven Workforce, Empowering HR, IT, and Search with Employee Solutions. If you don't have the chat or comments area opened up, please go ahead and do so now. Just look down below if you are on your phone or to the right-hand side if you are viewing us on a desktop for an area to leave your comments. This is where we'll be asking you questions and feedback. We want this to be a two-way street where it's truly interactive during the time we spend together during this session. Please feel free to share any ideas or questions that may pop up as we go through this session. In fact, let us know right now, where are you joining us from? As you all are sharing with us, I would like to formally introduce myself. My name is Monique and I am the host for today's live event. It's my pleasure to guide you through our engaging panel discussion featuring distinguished speakers and an esteemed audience on AI-driven workforce, empowering HR, IT, and search with employee solutions. This session will explore how AI is transforming workforce management, improving internal operations, and enhancing employee experiences. Today, we'll cover how AI is revolutionizing HR, IT, and employee support systems, real-world examples of AI-powered employee solutions, and best practices for leveraging AI-driven automation in business operations. This live panel discussion is brought to you by Pronix Inc. and Core.ai. Pronix Inc., my apologies. Pronix Inc. and Core.ai. Whether you are looking to optimize operations, boost productivity, or enhance the employee experience, this session will provide actionable insights for success. We will now introduce our three distinguished speakers, Amy Jeske, Barnaby Dorfman, and Dr. Sandra Gupta Gudina. Each of them are a beacon of expertise in the AI landscape. Amy, welcome. Please let us know a little bit about yourself.
Hey, thanks, Monique. Thanks for having me today. My name is Amy Jeske. I'm a partner sales director here at Core AI. So my role is I support our partners and their clients as they navigate this ever-changing world of AI and understand, where they can actually inject the right solution to improve and optimize, whether it's customer experience focused use cases, internal employee experience use cases, or even optimizing process automation through the value of AI solutions. So excited to join the conversation today.
Thank you so much for joining us. Barnaby, how are you, my friend? Let us know a little bit about yourself.
Sure, great. Yeah, good to be here. Thanks, Monique. Barnaby Dorfman. I've been in tech for a bit over 30 years. Spent about 7 years at Amazon, worked on early AI systems. The last dozen or so years in head of product and engineering roles in the HR tech space. Spent a number of years at a company called PayScale, working on compensation data and software to help companies better manage the way they pay their employees, and then more recently at a company called Go1 that is e-learning for employees, kind of a long tail platform library, and joined that at the beginning of the pandemic when everything was moving online, and leveraged AI and branches of AI for decades, and super excited about what's going on right now in kind of the LLM space. And currently working with about a half a dozen startups, B2B SaaS companies as an advisor.
All right, thank you so much for joining us. And last but not the very least, Sandra, how are you, my friend? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Monique, and thank you for having me here. I'm the Chief Information Officer for PB Mayers LLP. We are an accounting and wealth management firm with 13 locations across the East Coast. We do everything from taxes to audits and assurance and consulting and wealth advisory as well. I have been in the technology area for over 24 years now, I think. I don't want to carbon date myself over there, but it's been a long time. And as the CIO, AI has been top of mind for a long time. But what's exciting is what generative AI has brought those capabilities forefront to us, right? So we are really looking at that long-term 3-year roadmap, positioning our organization to have that differentiation and competitive advantage as we move along.
All right. Once again, thank you to each of you for being here with us. Let's dive into some of the key questions surrounding AI-driven workforce transformation. Amy, let's kick off with you on tackling key trends in AI for workforce management. Could you start by sharing the key trends in AI that are transforming HR, IT, and employee services?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I think ultimately the benefits of AI with an organization was first focused on providing optimization for a lot of like customer experience type use cases, sales, support, areas like that. But I think as the technologies continue to evolve, organizations are now really seeing the value of bringing some of those same concepts internally to bring value to both their current and potential employees. So, like, according to a recent McKinsey study, they found that most organizations today find employees spend about 1 to 2 hours application switching. That can be across anywhere from 8 to 12 applications. They're spending 20 to 30% time searching for information to do their jobs, 40% on routine tasks, and 98% of HR and IT staff are reporting feeling burnt out. So I think this provides a huge opportunity to adopt AI solutions to help alleviate this pain when it comes to your own internal employee processes and operations. We're seeing more and more employees consume AI solutions in their own daily lives and leveraging things like, now co-pilot applications that can help them be more efficient in their roles. And that's increased a lot over the last year. I think without having an orchestration layer that can work across all applications, this could also create a challenge with scaling pilots enterprise-wide and allowing the organization to maintain compliance and visibility across different AI solutions. And that can also lead to shadow IT implementations across different lines of business if you don't have really IT working and kind of monitoring what's going on across the whole business. I also think like one trend we're seeing, and I think we can probably all on this call and all the listeners can agree, that as employees, we now have more communication tools and applications than ever before. Like, I barely remember the days when if I needed to talk to somebody internally, I had to call them. Then it was like, okay, now I can send an email. Well, now you've got email, Slack, Teams, Salesforce, HubSpot, Jira, ADP, et cetera, et cetera. So while this is great, we have so many more ways to stay connected and communicate and share information. I think it's also becoming more and more difficult for employees to manage and to really understand where their source of truth is within an organization, and which channel or application they should be using at the right time. So I think one trend that we continue to see within organizations, I think this will continue to be very important, is being able to create valuable insights across all these multiple sources of information and application, and being able to really pull that together to provide the right information at the right time for any employee doing their job.
Thank you so much for sharing, Amy. In fact, that is a really good point. I never thought about that way. You're right. It's great that we are in a situation now where we have a lot of access to so many different resources. But like you said, as employees, sometimes you're right. It could be confusing as to which platform to use specifically when it comes to communication. So thank you so much for bringing that point up. Now, Barnaby and Chandra, do you all have anything to add? Barnaby, I'll start with you first.
Yeah, I think just sort of on the broader trends, I tend to think about HR tech as, in the arc of an employee's engagement with a company. It starts with recruiting, onboarding, performance management, all the way through to separation. Frankly, there's exciting stuff happening in every single one of those steps. I think I would just shine a light a little bit on the recruiting and talent acquisition piece. There's a bit of a kind of almost like an arms race going between companies and candidates, though, because on the one hand, you've got emerging tools that are really useful for streamlining and automating resume parsing and skills matching and kind of candidate ranking. But on the other side, candidates are using AI to basically generate the other side of that equation. I was recently involved with a search and helping find a senior engineer at a company. We got over 1,000 applications for that role, and a lot of them were clearly generated by ChatGPT. So anyway, I just think it's a really dynamic space, and in terms of kind of this concept of trends, that's one example. But you could do a deep dive really in all elements of engagement and find interesting, exciting things happening. But I thought I'd shine a light on that one.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Chandra, do you have something to add?
I would probably echo everything that Barnaby and Amy said, right? I mean, on one hand, to Amy's point, we have so many applications, right? So in many cases, I often joke about it, but I'm only half joking. Every second email I get is about a product that is going to solve all of my AI needs. And every third email is a service provider who's saying who's going to solve all of my cybersecurity requirements and needs, right? So, and then the third one is probably about staffing. So if you think about that space of multi-channel, multimodal type of communications happening, we take that for granted today. There still is a point where under official communication protocols, we think about, hey, do I use Teams? Do I use Slack? Do I use the phone? Where do I communicate and where do I keep that? And slowly we are moving in the direction of use whatever works for you kind of a thing. But then what we can really harness the power of AI would be to be able to pull all that content together and train on new systems, whether you're using RAG or you're using agentic type of use cases and things like that. But that is where I see AI coming in more handy for us, especially from a generative AI and using fine tuning and those kinds of things. The open AI part is probably more in terms of generative AI being like, I want to play with this and I want to update my resume and make it match to this job and so on and so forth. At an operational and organizational productivity level, we do require trust to be established, right? So there was a study that basically said almost like 70% of people did not trust using AI within an organization just because they don't know what the output is going to look like. But that just improves over a period of time. So I think workforce is going to look very different. There will be jobs that will go away, but there'll be a lot more jobs that will get created with a whole different requirement set in terms of how we operate and how we function as an organization.
Thank you so much for sharing, Sandra. Yes, each of you have shared some really valid points here. So I'm so glad that we were able to kick off this session with a great conversation. Our next question is for you, Barnaby, on driving employee experience through AI automation. How can AI-driven automation enhance daily HR and IT operations? Could you share examples of streamlined processes that have improved employee satisfaction?
Sure. I mean, I think, it's interesting. Like, what are the things that lead to dissatisfaction? It's often frustration around things like onboarding or lack of access to information or training. And, ironically, I think that the potential for artificial intelligence to actually be sort of more human in some ways in terms of the way that the organization engages with a new employee is very real. I think I'm seeing more and more companies leaning into leveraging chatbots and training, having custom trained chatbots on the knowledge base, if you will, of the company. So, one of the classic challenges when you join a new organization is learning all the acronyms. And so think about pointing a trainable chatbot at, your Confluence or Notion installation. There's definitely some privacy concerns and like back to that trust issue of, do I really want to train on every conversation that's happened in Slack, which people are talking about? I'm not sure, but kind of more in the abstract, you definitely can point chatbots at document corpuses, and then humans can have these very human interactions with a chatbot. I don't know if everybody saw that they just launched 1-800-CHAT-GPT yesterday, where you can call up and have a very human-like conversation. So think about a new employee kind of almost having like a mentor or a buddy system, but it's fully automated. And back to the point about everybody working remote or lots of people working remote, it's hard to just walk down to the coffee station and have that conversation and ask somebody. So I think that's one of the areas. The other I would point out is really just around all of the processes it takes to get somebody fully on board and productive. Amy talked about all of the different tools that we use. I know because I work with a number of organizations and they sort of onboard me. Like putting my profile picture on Slack and Jira and everywhere takes forever. And so there are more and more tools to automatically provision these systems, have a basic profile information, be it a photo or contact information, location, birthdays, whatever it is that you kind of want to share, propagate it out across all of those tools. So just generally, automating the manual processes that HR has typically had to deal with, and IT to an extent, and freeing them up for the truly human conversations. I think the kind of the last one that I would point out is just employee assistance. And when people are struggling, workplace wellness, I do think the sentiment analysis and the kinds of things that AI is really starting to get good at. And I'm not suggesting that we say, oh, hey, you're having a bad day, here's your automated therapist. But I do think that there's the potential to have some of these systems start sort of keying into really doing a better job of analyzing employee engagement surveys, for example, and kind of surfacing, because especially as an organization grows, it can be really time consuming to go through and read everything, and they tend to get a little siloed by department. But now imagine an agent looking across all the comments and simply saying, hey, yeah, the raw scores are this, but there's this other sort of undertone of, an issue that we should look into, and kind of start highlighting things. So those are a few areas that I think engagement has the potential to really be transformed. And I know that companies are starting to lean in a number of ways.
Thank you for sharing that. I really liked what you shared about chatbots, because especially, with employees being onboarded, there's a lot of anxiety potentially by the employee to getting things right, whether they should ask a question or not. But if they have the buddy, like you said, or the mentor of a chatbot, I feel that will make the onboarding process so much less stressful for both sides of the party, right? So thank you so much for sharing that. Next, well, not next, but Amy, is there anything else you would like to add in regards to this question?
Yeah, I mean, I think Barnaby did a great job of going through that. Even previously, when he kind of talked about, when you look at HR and IT operations, right, you got to think about it in this life cycle of an employee across all these different pillars when it comes to recruiting, onboarding, HR, IT, and talent. So going all the way back, to when you transition employees out and you need to bring new employees in. So I think you did a really good job of touching upon, earlier some of the areas, like when it comes to recruiting, whether that's assisting in generating the job descriptions, or even using, AI to help with interview management or rank matching candidates to try to reduce bias. I also liked how you mentioned it's kind of like an arms war too, because on the other side, you've got candidates who are using technology to try to, beat the system, if you will. So I thought that was an interesting point as well. And a lot of the things that you mentioned on onboarding, I would echo. So I think being able to use AI to create more curated journeys that can go across these different pillars within your business of HR and IT, and even also supporting your hiring managers. We talk a lot about the journey for a new employee coming on board, but there's often a lot of manual tasks and in areas that the person manager, the hiring manager has to make sure that they're completing. So being able to kind of create more of that journey when it comes to equipment provisioning, software access, team introductions, scheduling, 30, 60, 90-day milestones, and then including things like benefits enrolling and then ongoing training and development, I think are great areas. We haven't talked a lot about IT, but I think, there's definitely a lot of IT related use cases too that can benefit an organization from having more self-service for their employees, and to provide more, 24/7 support without putting that burden on your internal employees, and being able to meet them in all these channels and applications that we talked about that they're using. So things like creating, more self-service and automation for new applications, new equipment, or hardware fulfillment requests, ticketing management, notification of network outages, and then automatically being able to take actions to rectify that. And also one area I think we haven't talked about is using AI to help internal IT support staff. So, we have a lot of clients that leverage virtual agents, like we talked about, whether it's chat or on voice, but having a virtual agent that sits with that internal help desk agent that can help them resolve tickets faster within the organization by maybe proactively surfacing knowledge articles based on what the interaction and the incident is, being able to run process automations in the background so they can focus on, if they're in a live conversation, they can focus on that. and even providing call or ticket summarization that can link back to your systems. I think these are all examples that can have an immediate impact to business operations and employee satisfaction. And we've seen this in many of our clients today. So we have one global pharmaceutical company that's deployed an automation program, including virtual assistants for IT related use cases, as well as providing that agent assist capability that I mentioned when it comes to routing, intent detection, understanding the issue that's coming up. They've had nearly 70% of bot resolved containment, which has resulted in about 71% reduction in calls to their help desk. 88% of their desk volume is now going through that intelligent chat, because again, I think that's everybody's now mode of communication. If I can just chat and get help while I'm doing the 5 other things that I need to do, that's most people's preferred method. So, but in addition to those like operational benefits, they're also receiving 4 out of 5 stars from a scoring perspective for user satisfaction. And their employees have gained over 500,000 minutes of productivity this year. And then I think organizations can also leverage AI agents more holistically to improve IT operations. So we have one client who's using an AI agent and LLM to analyze all their ticket interaction, and then using that to generate updated support documentation to improve their ticket resolution. So that new support documentation can then be reviewed, keeping that human in the loop. And then once approved, it's automatically uploaded into their knowledge base to then help improve, future ticket resolution time. So, on a micro level, but then on a macro level, you can really leverage AI to really support your holistic operations.
Thank you so much for sharing those various examples and use cases. I think those are always great to hear the stories, so people can see how it can be applicable possibly in their own situation. Chandra, is there anything else you would like to add?
No, Monique, I think those are really great use cases that Amy mentioned. If I had to just highlight between Barnaby and Amy, I think 2 things stand out very well, right? So one is sentiment analysis. That could be huge for us as HR and IT, our service organizations. Being able to analyze the sentiment and appropriately provide those responses or redirect those and take actions is going to be huge in terms of satisfaction rates and in terms of having an engaged and satisfied customer. I think the second thing is personalization. I mean, as organizations grow from becoming small to medium to mid-size to large, so on and so forth, personalization is something that gets lost. That used to be the issue as in the past, but now that can be addressed in the current, where you can have extreme levels of personalization. And the best part is you're actually used to it, right? So, I mean, you have AI already built into your Siri, your Alexa, your any other Cortana, whatever you want to call it, and you're already using it. So it comes natural. It's not one that requires a manual. It doesn't require you to go through trainings and things like that. So it is, from an artificial intelligence perspective, these tools really help us personalize it very, very well. The caution, however, is going to be how you train that personalization, right? That's where your trust factor comes in. That's where your data set comes in. That's where making sure that your responses are in line with what your company's policies and guidelines are, and making sure that you have a human in the loop to validate and verify as you learn these things. Don't be in a rush to put something out there.
Thank you so much. And in fact, we do have a question coming up soon, so stay tuned for anyone who wants to learn more about personalization that Chandra just gave us a little preview as to what's possible with AI. So thank you so much. Next up, we would like to address leveraging AI for smart search and knowledge management. Chandra, how can AI-powered search improve employees' ability to find information quickly and accurately?
Monique, search and knowledge management are such fascinating things, right? So, I mean, we have exponential. I don't think even exponential is a good word to say how quickly data keeps bubbling up and how information keeps growing faster. Searching through that, sifting through that, getting information. I mean, that's basic search for us still, right? So you go to Google, you search for something, you go into your content management system, you search for something. But in the world of AI and going forward, intelligent search is no longer just about finding the right document or finding what you're looking for or finding the right piece of information. Intelligent search is going to be much more comprehensive. And what we are doing here, as an example, at PB Mayors, we moved our infrastructure and all of our applications to the cloud in 3 years. One of the key things we moved to Box, and Box provides something called Box AI. So that's where all our content resides, and we are able to leverage intelligent search on that content. What I mean by that is when I search for something, it is not just giving me the correct document I'm looking for, it's giving me the document, the context of what I'm searching for, and summarizing that for me, right? So in the past, I would open that document and think, yeah, I think that's the right one. Then I'll read through it, then I'll summarize it, then I'll do all of these things. And that took probably minutes to hours, depending on the size of the content and what you're looking for. Today, that's probably seconds to minutes, depending on how you're using it. And imagine that as a force multiplier across an organization. That's a huge savings in time when you try to even think about, I'm looking for X, but what I'm getting is I'm getting X, I'm getting a summary of X, and I'm also being told that X has got these variables and insights built into it, right? So, I mean, that's almost like more than an assistant doing something for you and in an intelligent manner. In reality, knowledge management is something that is so crucial, but every organization struggles with it, right? So for example, where do you have the time to document certain things if you're a mid-sized organization? You write a piece of code, you keep your code repository somewhere, it gets lost. When you think about Copilot and GitHub together, that not only improves your developers' time, but also helps you manage that knowledge much better. Think about how we are using like the transformer technology of adding contextual answers to whatever training you're providing, right? So that knowledge management is no longer static. That's the exciting part, right? So it's not like you entered something that you did and you got an output and that output stays consistent 2 years later. It's going to change. And instead of someone going in and updating, these algorithms actually learn from that content and update that content on their own. So your knowledge management is actually a learning organic thing sitting somewhere behind the scenes without a human actually going and making changes. That's exciting, but also scary in the sense that you need to make sure you're still validating that content, right? So don't get ahead of yourself, but also start validating and doing things in such a way that is consistent again with the type of service you're trying to deliver. Maybe you're trying to make a shift in a different direction. And AI does not change your culture, but it can heavily influence your culture based on the outputs and outcomes that are coming out of it.
Thank you so much for sharing. Yes, and then sharing just your journey of the fact that your company was able to go to the cloud. So that was a great example. So thank you so much for sharing that. Amy, is there anything that you would like to address for this question?
I think Chandra was spot on in just explaining how the kind of the evolution of search and again, even when I was thinking about this question, even your example, Chandra, of like Google is exactly what like I thought about is, you know, it wasn't that long ago when you needed information, you searched on Google, you just were presented with the links, right? And then you had to go through and figure out which one's right for you. Well, now we have the AI overview and we're getting so accustomed to that where it's like, I get mad if I ask something to like Google and it's not giving me the answer and I have to go to, like, I would still want to verify the answer. Like I'll look to see what link it is or, you know, oh wait, that doesn't quite match my answer. Let me go to this one. But, you know, we're just becoming more and more accustomed to this type of technology in our everyday lives that I do think it's going to become table stakes within any organization in a very quick amount of time. And I think he also touched upon the need for compliance and guardrails because information does change so quickly. And I think this is a huge pain point that organizations have and why, you know, it is so hard for their employees to find the right information because information is constantly changing and it's very cumbersome to try to keep that updated within your knowledge repositories and databases. So being able to leverage AI for that, but also making sure that you're doing it responsibly. Things like rules-based access controls, because maybe some information you need to, gatekeep what is shared if it's, a manager versus an employee or within an HR function or somebody else within the business. So being able to have, kind of guardrails around rules-based access is also important. And I think also there's a hesitation of companies that may be in like highly regulated industries of how they can leverage AI within a search capability and having those guardrails in place. But we have one client that has leveraged intelligent search within a function of their business. So they're a global wealth management provider, and they've deployed a search solution that helps alleviate the burden of their wealth advisors that would have to comb through thousands of documents daily in order to provide the most up-to-date briefings and intelligence on their current positioning for their investment management. So they now are able, in that conversational way that we've talked about, be able to ask questions of this search bot and then be able to, again, receive the generated response, that contextual awareness and information with the links to the documents that it comes from, so they can then still have that oversight and make sure that the information that they're sharing is the most relevant to what they're searching for. But now they can focus on that aspect of it and provide, the right advice at the right time versus spending so much time on manually searching and combing through the documents to try to find the right answer. And again, I think that comes back to providing also that conversational way of asking, instead of being reliant on, oh, I didn't say this keyword right, so actually I needed this document, but it didn't pull up because I didn't say the right internal language, or I didn't, use it in the way that my company had tagged that document. So I think these are all areas that we'll continue to see huge improvements in the way we find and are able to leverage the right information at the right time.
Thank you so much, Amy. Barnaby, is there anything you would like to add?
Sure. I was just totally agree with everything that's been said. I having started to working on the web in the mid 90s, back in the Paleolithic, I think we learned that we all thought it was a search problem. And in particular, e-commerce. So I grew up in more of the B2C e-commerce space, and it was like, okay, well, we have this massive store and people know what they're looking for. They just type in what they're looking for and boom, they found it, and that's problem solved. What we learned pretty quickly as we tried to scale and add more and more categories of things was it's not so much a search problem as it is a discovery problem. People don't actually know everything they're looking for. They're trying to solve a problem, but they don't know the solution to that problem. And if you think about whether it's the Amazon or the Netflixes of the world, that they've been able to do an amazing job with, maybe too good of a job in some cases, with recommendations and helping people find things they didn't know they wanted or needed. It's been hard to do that in a B2B space because we don't have the scale, right? We don't have millions of users doing something, trying to buy toys for Christmas. But what AI has brought to the table now is the ability to create tools that will help people actually find, and not just find, but discover things they need to be successful in their job. And I think increasingly, people have to work backwards from a problem. We're no longer just, standing on an assembly line and turning a wrench and cranking things out. We're solving more and more complex problems that do require unique human intellect. And we're trying to grow a business, or we're trying to reduce the amount of customer service calls that, some of the examples of ways that AI has been helping with that. But letting somebody start with what's the problem and then work backwards and have AI scan all the content of the organization and interactions and discover things that they wouldn't otherwise be aware of unless they had these tools. So that's just something I would add to the mix.
Thank you so much. Our next question is in regards to optimizing business operations. And as we know, optimizing business operations in general is very important. But more so now, we're going to talk about optimizing business operations with AI in employee services. Amy, which repetitive tasks in HR and IT are most suitable for automation, and what impact does this have on overall business operations?
Well, I think we've mentioned a lot of those, so far, just even in this conversation. So, there's a lot of areas from an HR perspective where we can reduce the manual efforts of your HR team and your people managers to free up their time to focus on more strategic or value-added tasks. So I think things like being able to leverage AI to support your employees when it comes to them checking their leave balance or submitting PTO requests, and then even on the flip side, having those be approved, checking holiday calendars or benefit management and enrollment information, payroll questions, location salary changes, setting up onboarding buddies. There's a lot of areas within onboarding that we talked about that could also be manual efforts that could be optimized through automation, whether it's, creating those curated journeys through the onboarding process, providing push notifications for new hires and managers for task completion, and ensuring you're progressing on that checklist for onboarding steps or even offboarding steps as well. Things like hardware requirements, ordering equipment, and even scheduling training. So I think those are all some areas that can be leveraged and are ripe for kind of like those manual routine tasks for automation. And the same, mentioned a few of those already when it comes to IT. So, the goal is to try to reduce the amount of tickets or burden to the internal IT help desk through better self-service and faster ticket resolution with automation. So things like managing devices, software access, including password resets, equipment fulfillment requests, incident resolutions, and ticketing management, or even proactively monitoring for outages and being able to communicate that out. I think these are all areas with, again, integrations to the applications that you're using and having role-based rules so that you can actually complete these tasks with an AI agent that can take those actions in the right steps, crossing multiple applications without having a lot of manual human involvement are all areas where you can really adopt process automation within HR and IT. And I think these can have immediate impact from a cost savings perspective on the organization by reducing some of that workload. But again, it also needs to have impact to your employee satisfaction. So I think it can improve the satisfaction for the employee that's needing the help, as well as satisfaction for the employee who does not have to spend their time manually doing some of these routine tasks and can then focus on the areas that can deliver more business back or value back to the business and be a little bit more strategic.
Thank you so much for sharing, Amy. Barnaby, is there anything you would like to add?
Sure. I mean, I've spent decades just trying to automate all the things, and I think we all, want to do that. And anything that is repetitive, we should be seeking to automate. What I think is exciting and unique right now, and Chandra mentioned agentic AI, and that's been a very, very sort of hot topic in the last several months. Microsoft, at their kind of end of year big tech conference unveil technology event, and Amazon in the last months have unveiled things. Many companies, and just for the audience, basically, if you think about it, if you've all used ChatGPT, it's very sort of one-off, and it's also like a conversation with someone with an extremely short attention span and memory, right? And what agentic AI is going to do is this notion of turning these tools into agents that can not only be asked a question, but based on the question can make a decision about something that should be done, and then even actually go out and do it and take care of things and communicate back what was done. So there's this loop of activity and action. And I predict that in the next year, just as a year ago, because I've hated chatbots for a very long time. And a year ago, I was like, these are going to get smart and they're going to get good. And that's happened. And now what I think we're going to see in the next year is that individual employees and departments will be armed with the ability to automate things that used to require software developers to do that work, or bring in consultants, or buy some third-party B2B SaaS tool. And individuals and departments will basically whittle away at the repetitive stuff that nobody enjoys doing and that really are not all that value add, or are, but need to be done at scale. And so that's what I predict, and I think what's going to happen.
Thank you so much. Yes, I would agree with you there. Initially, I was not a big fan of chatbots either, but they have definitely improved over the years. So thank you so much for sharing that, Barnaby. For those of you all that are here with us live, We're a little bit past the halfway mark of our session here. Thank you so much. We've had such a large amount of questions come in, but if you have not asked your question yet, please go ahead and do so now. We're going to go through these next couple of questions pretty quickly for the sake of time, because we do have a hard stop at the top of the hour, and we want to make sure that we're able to address as many of your questions as possible. Our next question is in regards to improving employee retention and engagement. Barnaby, how can AI insights into employee behavior help organizations proactively address employee engagement and reduce turnover?
Sure. I think, and we've touched on a number of these things, for example, the sentiment analysis, really being able to understand how people are feeling as human beings about things. But zooming out a little bit, I think retention, there are a number of dimensions to retention. Compensation is an important one. But fundamentally, there tends to be kind of a bucket of positives and a bucket of negatives. We all think about our jobs. There's like the things that we don't like about the job, but we put up with. If they were to go away, I'd be more engaged. And then there's things I love, and if there were more of those, I'd be more engaged. Starting on the negative, I think AI can help us to essentially be an early warning system, if you will, for when things are not going well, both at the organizational level, the team level, and the individual level. And there are still a number of issues we all have to work out in terms of privacy and trust. So we don't want to sort of be listening in on every Slack conversation, but maybe it's in the group at the group level, and sort of identifying when there may be conflict. I think there are a number of things that are just data that you can see around engagement. If somebody's just not going to very many meetings, is not very, or trends in when people are absent. These are things that can help us sort of identify when people are unhappy or when there's something negative going on. But I'd like to actually shift the focus more to the positive. And I think everybody is the most engaged when they're succeeding, right? We all just want to succeed at work. And so I think the real opportunity is for companies to lean into these tools to help people be more successful at work. And yes, there's a lot of fear about displacement and people losing jobs, but let's face it, we're at full employment in the United States, and we have all this technology, and there are more people employed in a number of professions now that people thought were going to be completely automated away than ever before. And so leaning in and using tools to help people, for example, with personalized career paths and directions. Just a real quick quote. There's a guy named Kent Beck. He's a thought leader in software development. After trying ChatGPT for the first time, he tweeted, "The value of 90% of my skills just dropped to $0. The leverage for the remaining 10% just went up by 1,000 times. I need to recalibrate." So I think we just need to help our employees figure out how to use all these tools, how to be successful. And if we do that, they're going to be engaged and they're going to be happy.
Thank you so much for sharing. Amy and Chandra, do you all have something to add? And please just make it very quickly based on the time that we have left.
Oh, I can probably just jump in with just to combine this with the optimizing business operations. And I also see questions about what are some of the transformative business outcomes and things like that. I mean, in my opinion, and I already see this happening at my current organization and at other organizations I this as well, is because of these advancements and adoption of AI-related technologies, organizational intelligence is growing at a much faster pace today, right? So people work with people, people work with systems, systems work with systems. Now, when you interconnect all of them together, the net result is a significant increase in organizational intelligence. And the rate at which that organizational intelligence is changing is going to get even more faster and much more quicker, right? So we will feel like, oh, this was not even a conversation we were having 10 years back. Now 10 years is going to become like 1 year and a few weeks and so on and so forth. So the rate of change is going to get very much accelerated. Employee retention and engagement is going to be crucial, because there was a question again in the chat here, which was about, what about people who don't want to use AI? This is going to be one of those questions where I don't like technology, right? So can you say I don't like technology and I don't want to use technology? There will be few people who will not want to do that. There will be few people who may raise their hand and say, I don't have a smartphone. but 95, 99% of the people will have a smartphone. They will be using AI that is already embedded into all of those things. So it's not even an option anymore for us, but it is more of a question of how can we make it and leverage it to our benefit as we go along in our career as well as our personal lives.
Thank you so much. Amy, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I mean, I think Barnaby and Chandra, said both, that very well. I think the only thing I would just, echo is kind of, again, to Barnaby's point, like the amount of data, as we've talked about, like all the applications and all the tools that we're using, there's such an opportunity for so much data now for HR teams to have to really try to be more proactive when it comes to understanding employee sentiment, culture, trying to signal for maybe where there's potential to lose an employee, right, or employees' dissatisfaction. So I think that's just the area for a huge opportunity for AI is because they can analyze. If you can feed the data, right, it can analyze that and really turn that into more actionable insights in a much more scalable way than we can do, with just people, trying to review this information and gain the right insights from it. So I think it's just being able to leverage all this data that we're collecting and making sure that you are actually doing something with it to understand the state of your employee sentiment.
Thank you so much. Now, our next question, Sandra has already given us a preview about, and as I stated before, we're transitioning now to AI-powered personalization in regards to employee support. Amy, how can AI-driven personalization enhance learning and career development opportunities for employees?
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about this, but I think, just moving that needle from being reactive to more proactive and as a strategy. So, I think previously, talent management, development, even hiring managers have had to rely heavily on annual performance reviews or gut instincts, or even more, put the burden on the employee for them to determine what they should be doing to prepare for their next career goal, or what they should be doing for like self-learning and self-career development. And I think that just leads to turnover and lower employee satisfaction. So, now being able to, again, as we talked about, like leveraging the data that's available all the time, not just in, 1 to 2 times a year when you're doing a employee review or a self-review, but actually taking from the time they become an employee and accessing their skill set, their level, their experience, continuing to bring in their career goals, and then tailoring development plans for each employee's unique journey, identifying maybe the skill set that they have and the job that they want to go to, and help identify those gaps and recommend courses or action that they can take throughout the year to better continue to just be on that self development path, I think, is an area for improvement. Another exciting application, I think, is in internal mobility for talent management. So again, being able to analyze an employee's skill set and recommend internal job opportunities that may align with their abilities, and be more proactive in that sense, again, putting that burden on the employee to always know what maybe upcoming job opportunities there are internally, especially if it may cross into other lines of business that they don't always have clear direct line of sight to. So I think that proactive approach can reduce recruitment costs, but also foster more a culture of growth and opportunity with an organization year round, and not just 1 to 2 times a year.
Thank you so much, Amy, for sharing your insights. Barnaby, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, building on that, I would say, I think I'm going to focus on the learning piece, because that is really where we need to differentiate increasingly. Learning used to be one size fits most, right? It was primary school, college, so many hours in a classroom of ongoing training. And if that didn't work for you, you kind of, you weren't eligible for a variety of kinds of work. I would say now we have the ability to meet people and learners kind of where they are and in their style. And some people are much better in an interactive learning thing, and small snippets and kind of test me and then give me feedback. Other people like to go deep and they prefer to read. So video is better for some, audio. Some people podcast. They'll go for a walk and they'll listen. Frequency for some folks, a week in a classroom once a year is the best way for them to continue to hone their skills. As I said, other people, they want a snack along the way throughout the year. And so I think the opportunity to really give people flexible ways of learning and access. And I think the great thing about that is, diversity, equity, and inclusion has been brought up a few times. But this is a way of including people who are maybe neurodivergent or have different learning styles that haven't worked before, but really can work for them now. And we need to leverage the things that are uniquely human, and that's sort of expanding the spectrum of what works in the workforce, for employers.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And yes, and bringing up the whole journey of learning of what it used to be and now where we are today. So thank you so much for sharing that. So based on time, we're going to kind of mix things up. We're going to jump to actually our very last question. So we'll have enough time to address any questions from the audience. So we're going to talk about the future of AI-driven workforce transformation. Sandra, what advancements in AI do you foresee shaping the future of workforce transformation in the next 3 to 5 years?
Monique, I think AI is going to change a lot of things, and it already has started doing that, right? So it's not a question of if, it's more of it was a question of when, and now we are actually seeing it happen. If you divide the work that is done by our workforce into 3 categories, right? So first category is high cognizance, and I saw a question about how does this change executive leadership? How does this change overall management and leadership? And then let's say that is one layer of the work. High cognizance, high negotiation, back and forth, and things like that. And then you have the second layer, which is more analytical in nature. It's rules-based. It's everything related from much of the work that we do today. That's where the bulk of our organization is. And then you have the third layer, which is predominantly entering data and getting information into the right systems and making sure we are keeping the data clean and going forward. What AI is going to do is going to shrink that middle layer a lot for us. So it is going to take over a lot of those analytics, the synthesis, the insights generation, the transactional activity. All of that can be done and will be done through AI, whether it's agentic, whether it is generative AI, or whatever it might be. And those roles will then morph into something else. What I definitely don't want us to think is, hey, AI is coming for your jobs. It is coming for your jobs. I think we should be very well aware of that. But what it is creating is a different set of jobs, a different set of knowledge base that we have to think about. If you also want to think about it in this way, right? So when we think about self-service as an example, how we define self-service a few years back is going to be very different from how we define self-service today. We talked about learning and career management and other things that Amy and Barnaby touched upon, right? So imagine a world where you have multiple systems. You have a learning management system, you have a performance evaluation system, you have a recruitment system, you have a meeting note system. And this is a world where multi-layer architectures pull all of that information through a large language model and then advise you, and you overlay that with sentiment analysis and career development pathways and things like that. All of that is no longer a matter of months anymore. It is through a few clicks that you achieve and you get a shell and then you get to refine it. In all of this, I think we should not forget the human factor. So the human in the loop is going to be extremely essential for us as we become more of an AI-driven workforce, right? So transformation is happening. It's not a question of it'll happen in the future. It is an ongoing thing. A simple example of our keyboard. I'm pretty sure everyone here uses Excel, right? At some point in time of life, you have to use Excel if you're on this call. Imagine having an assistant sitting right there with you. Imagine you had to create something in Excel, and back in the day, you had to look for it, you had to read through books, you had to go through videos and things like that. And then even if it's like creating a pivot table or something like that, right? Today, you can have a co-pilot agent sitting right there as your virtual assistant, and you basically tell that assistant to develop it for you, and it creates a space and creates that kind of an output for you. That entire time has changed, right? So that means faster delivery, faster output, lower cost, and much more high cognizance of effort that has to go in. So our workforce will look very different in an AI-driven environment, and we are already seeing that change happen as we start adopting and getting used to that AI-driven changes that are coming through.
Thank you so much for sharing, Chandra. It reminds me of the days of Excel for Dummies for me, where I had to figure out how to do pivot tables and things like that. So you brought up some good memories there. Barnaby, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I mean, we're barreling toward artificial general intelligence, and people debate, are we there yet, or how soon it's going to happen? But it's going to happen, and basically the definition of that is when computers are as smart and then smarter than people. You combine that with robotics and a variety of other things, and the reality is there's going to be massive displacement. In the near term, I'm talking with startups that are they're basically not hiring whole functions or hiring 1 to 2 people where a function might have been 3 to 5 or 10 people. There is going to be massive displacement. It's not that there isn't going to be opportunity for people, but it's not going to be in the same things. And so we've got to be cognizant of that. And I think if we're as a society guilty of anything, through the Industrial Revolution, the Information Revolution, is not doing a great job of helping people through those transitions and being thoughtful and caring about that. And I think, I've been reading books about kind of going out, and 5 years may not be too far out to think about this, but we will get to a place where it's basically called post-utility work, where people work not because we need to for utility to solve problems, because we enjoy it. People will still want to cook and build model airplanes, but so I think, I'll just make a prediction. I don't think we're too far away from a 4-day work week in the United States or less. I think employers should start embracing that, because it comes back to that engagement and that leveraging what humans are truly great at, which is still creativity, ideation, original thought.
Thank you so much for sharing. All right, so we have wrapped up our questions. We're opening it up to live Q&A. We only have a few minutes. So to the speakers, I'm asking this rapid fire really quickly. I think we've addressed most of the questions, quite frankly, in the chat, but I think there's 2 that we might be able to address. This first question: how does shadow IT affect the future of HR when candidates utilize AI tools like ChatGPT to interview? Is that frowned upon, or is that the future for interviewing candidates?
Monique, I'll take a shot at it in terms of not just shadow HR or shadow IT. It could be anything, right? Whatever we bring and use is a function of the institutions and policies that we create. So AI is not going to change that. It's how we use it and how we leverage it is what is going to vary. If your institutional policy says you can only do X, Y, and Z, then AI's outputs will most likely align with that X, Y, and Z. There will be more negotiation, there will be more questioning, there will be more scrutiny around it. But ultimately, the generation of wealth, or wealth can be human talent, wealth can be financial wealth as well, is all dependent on the institutions that we create around us. So that's where I would focus our attention on. It's not so much the shadowness of an organization. It's, do you have the right institutional controls, mechanisms, scalability, and all things necessary to guide a human to go through it. If you can guide a human to go through it, AI will follow along.
All right, thank you. Sandra, you somewhat have answered this question, but I would love to open this up to you, Amy and Barnaby. How should organizations address potential employee resistance to AI-driven workforce technologies?
My approach to these things is always to just go slow. Not go slow. Break things down into small bites and actually go fast, but try not to, like, we don't want to implement this thing and spend 6 months on it, because everything's going to be different in 6 months. And so I think and that's also very daunting to people. If we say to somebody, okay, you need to go automate your entire job and then we'll find something else for you to do. Okay, that's going to be terrifying to the average person. But if we were to simply say, like, here's one thing that we see you do, we know you have to do 25 times a day, and it's just routine. Here's a tool that will help you automate, and try that. So that's the kind of thing that I would suggest.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would echo that. I would just say, really understanding the the areas where you have like that low-hanging fruit for automation or optimization within the organization. I don't think people are resistant when they see the value, when they understand how it's going to affect them and help them do their job. Like you said earlier, Barnaby, people just want to be successful. So we're willing to leverage whatever it is, as long as it is helping me and not becoming now a roadblock to me being able to do my job.
Yes. So Sandra, you would like to have some closing comments real quick as we end?
I was just going to mention for organizations, there are 3 types of debt that you absolutely have to manage. And this is based on what we have seen. The first one is keep your technology debt as low as possible, right? If you want to start leveraging and adopting AI, keep your technology debt very low. The second one is cut down on your process debt, or at least know what your processes look like. Otherwise, it's just going to create more chaos for you as you go along. And the third, probably the most important, is your data debt, right? So we talked a lot about AI, we talked a lot about use cases and things like that, but your AI is really waiting for your learning data. And if that is not going to be clean and clear, or is not usable, then the outcome will also be unclear and unusable or catastrophic in some cases. So it's not so much as a caution, but it is something, if you're trying to get up to speed on any of these things, those 3 debts have to be kept as low as possible in order to make sure you can leverage and get the most out of it. End of the day, AI is not magic, right? So let's be very clear about that. It's not magic. It's not something that you can imagine it can happen. So start very simple. Don't make it complex.
Thank you so much. As we conclude today's panel, I'd like to extend a heartfelt thank you to our speakers, Amy, Barnaby, and Chandra, for their deep dives, and to our audience for their engagement. This event's recording will be available on the same LinkedIn Live event page for those who missed it or wish to revisit these discussions. Today, our discussion has explored the vast potential of AI-driven workforce solutions, from enhancing internal search and knowledge management to optimizing HR and IT operations. As you consider applying these solutions in your organization, remember that AI adoption starts with a clear vision and a commitment to continuous improvement. Our teams at Pronix Inc. and Core.ai are here to support you on this journey. Thank you for being a part of this transformative conversation. Again, my name is Monique, and it's been a pleasure to be a host for today's event. Bye-bye now.